Well, folks, thanks for joining us. You can see from the very fancy studios here in Calgary, Alberta. I've been attending a number of meetings, was at the convention on Friday night reporting to you. And so here we are before we head off to meetings in Ottawa coming up over the next few days. Hope you don't mind the fancy backdrop here. I want to take some time this morning. We're going to deal with some things going on around the world, of course, but some things that are going to make you sit back and maybe rock you back a little bit. So stay tuned on the culture and on the tech side. First of all, latest updates, the Iranian regime is still more or less in place. The Ayatollah has not actually capitulated yet. He hasn't been caught in a coup. He hasn't run from the country, though the still reports about flights out of Tehran with high-ranking officials and possibly lots of money leaving Tehran. We don't know. We're getting that confirmed, but sources are continuing to say that the regime is at the point of teeter-tottering, and that would be, of course, a wonderful thing for world peace because it has been the greatest exporter, the Iranian regime, the greatest exporter of death and terror in the modern world and then in the modern era. So let's keep our eyes on that and see what is going to happen. As we already commented, people are starting to wake up to the fact that the EU finally has become the last big organization on earth to categorize the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist entity because, of course, they do vicious terrorist work around the world. So good to see that moving, I suppose. And finally, we're seeing it on the streets, where before on the streets we're seeing massive demonstrations and even riots and unfortunate deaths and all kinds of things. 100,000 people in Toronto, Canada, out on the streets supporting the people of Iran and in support of the thousands who have been murdered and slaughtered there. Large diaspora of Iranians in Canada, and certainly we're seeing that come to the fore there. The situation right now on the stock markets today as the week opens, Kevin Warsh is, as we've already commented, the appointment of President Donald Trump to the Federal Reserve Board, and that's got people, they're not quite sure which way he's going to go. So I want to talk about that just for a minute and why that affects, why the whole market economy then just sort of takes a bit of a pause. The Federal Reserve Board, to a lot of people, is a bit of a mystery, and actually only because its origins don't get talked about all that much. The Federal Reserve Board came into being in 1913 in the United States, and that was after several years of real economic turmoil, especially what's called the 1906 and 1907 panic in the markets, because there was no centralized bank, and banks were operating all over the place. They're still by the rules, but when things went into a panic, when people didn't know what was happening and they stopped spending, they stopped investing, the entire economy was screeching to a stop. And so the government of the day in the United States said, we really need to have something in place, like a central bank that can bring a little bit of stability. It's at extreme times of unease and where the unknown is just really grabbing people and there's no investment, nothing's happening. And that was the original purpose for that Federal Reserve Board, to make a decision on interest rates and to make it supposed to be separately from political considerations. That's why it was set up at arm's length. And basically, and it can get a bit complicated, but in its most simple form, what the Federal Reserve does, if the economy seems to be going really slow, and it's as a result of things beyond, let's say, the reach or beyond the power of businesses, small and large, then what the Federal Reserve would do would lower the interest rate. That's basically the cost of money. It would influence the loan rate of banks to citizens and to businesses. So if the interest rate drops low, then there's going to be a tendency for individuals and even large business to borrow that money and invest. And so there would be a surge in the economy. The problem with that, when you get a surge in the economy, you get a lot of money flowing into the economy, then you start to see prices going up, and that creates inflation. Now, we have said, keep in mind, the biggest single factor, though there are others too, inflation is government spending with borrowed money. That dumps even more money into the marketplace, which would be heating up if the Federal Reserve has lowered its rates, and so you start to run into an inflation. So what does the Federal Reserve do? It's supposed to be just for really dire emergencies, but as more and more money is being borrowed and then spent, and more things are being spent on borrowed money, because the interest rates are low, then the Federal Reserve would, it's supposed to be only in times of emergency, would raise the interest rate. What does that do? People stop borrowing. Businesses stop borrowing. And the interest rates go down, spending goes down, and you have supposedly prices and inflation going down. So that was really the intent of the Federal Reserve Board, kind of like a gas pedal at some times and kind of like a brake at some times. And over the last several years, people can argue maybe 20, maybe 30 years, there's an accusation that's becoming more and more politically used. And it would be this way: if a president is going into an election, let's say a year ahead, and wants the economy looking good and wants to, wants to see investment and jobs and roads being built and houses being built, then if the president could influence the person who's the head of the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rate, people start borrowing, people start investing, and for a while it looks like the economy's on fire. And that's why it's such a sensitive position. That's why it's supposed to be separate from the political process, but it's been argued that in fact it hasn't been all that separate. And now we have in place, of course, the Kevin Wershoff from the appointment from the president. And so that's why now there's a bit of a pause in the market, because it's being said, and people look at the economic studies that he has done and written over the last number of years. He's going to be taking, the guess is, he's going to be taking more of a standoff approach. He's going to be saying, you have to let the economy work through certain things. You can't artificially keep either hitting the brake or hitting the gas pedal, and he's going to take a more standoffish approach, which people who are investing and people in business, they kind of like that. Then it's left up to individuals and citizens and businesses to make decisions based on what they think is going to be good, what products and services are going to go ahead. And that's how it's supposed to be acting. And so you have a Federal Reserve Board that is not as activist, that does not keep leaping in. That's why the markets, there's a bit of a hold with some optimism, because people are thinking, government and even the long arm of government isn't going to be quite as much involved. They're going to let things run their course. That's why we're seeing just a bit of a pause here. And but we're also seeing some new investment, because people are realizing the government isn't just going to be leaping in and cranking that Federal Reserve rate. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, just some phenomenal things we need to look at on the cultural front. You've heard of the Kennedy Center. It's a massive center in the United States, and its purpose for the arts, it was formed not long after the assassination of President Kennedy, and it's been huge, and it's largely seen, of course, also by people in politics as a political statement. As John Kennedy, JFK, was a Democrat president, so it's seen as a bit of a boost for the, let's say, the Democrats, in a very soft way on the social side and on the cultural side. And now we have President Trump has decided that he wants to, and he has changed the name. He's hooked his name in there with possibly Trump Kennedy Center, and got a huge reaction against that. You have massive organizations, you have symphonies, you have artists like Philip Glass of the National Symphony and others who are very much involved on the arts front, and they're actually pulling out. You have large performances that have been taking place there annually for years. They're starting to cancel out. The Washington National Opera, the person who's head of artistic development for the Kennedy Center, all backing out. And all of a sudden it looks like the Kennedy Center, this huge artistic musical foundation, running out of people and groups who are going to be playing there. So President Trump kind of got some people upset when they announced that the inauguration, that the kickoff of the documentary about Melania, simply called Melania, was going to play there. In fact, it did play there, and a lot of people upset. And so this is where culture starts to affect entertainment. Entertainment starts to affect culture. It's reported, as far as that documentary itself, $7 million over the weekend on the documentary of Melania. Strongest opening for a documentary in the last 10 years for any documentary. A lot of people, again, so political that huge opposition just to the fact that Melania Trump is First Lady, that there would be a documentary made about her, even if she's involved in it. That's what people are doing all the time these days. They are getting documentaries made about themselves to try and leave the world with a positive image of who and what they are. And just to show you how political it is, as far as the documentary itself around the country, doing well in states like Florida and Texas, not so well in states which are predominantly Democrats. So really shows how much we are and our politics are affected by the culture, and whether we are going to have the culture being affected by entertainment. It's kind of a round circle of things, and it affects, for instance, it affects what pours out onto the streets. That the protests that we're seeing on the streets are politically motivated, and of course you have thousands who would be out on the streets, let's say, for Hamas and for forces against Israel, possibly, and but nobody out on the streets. Almost nobody out until recently in Toronto, protesting the fact that tens of thousands of people have been murdered in Iran. So we are very much, our politics are very much affected by the culture, which is what we mean by when we say politics is downstream of culture. Downstream of culture. The politics is affected by the culture. Well, talking about the culture, of course, the Grammy Awards, for those of you who tuned in last night, a lot of things going on there, just really some eye-opening stuff. Cher, of course, gets a Lifetime Award. Nobody can really complain about that. She is an icon. Justin Bieber showed up in his underwear and performed, yes, I'm not making that up, performed a set in his underwear. Bad Bunny, who is not from the U.S., as you know, first time ever in Grammy history, his album wins because, what's the first time? It's all Spanish. It's all in Spanish. And of course, Bad Bunny coming to the Super Bowl with huge controversy because he is so anti the administration and anti-Trump. And then you see J.K. Rowling, of course, the Harry Potter series, which has been loved and admired by literally billions of people. She's getting huge attacks because she made a comment about the fact, as you know, she's not buying into the whole gender thing. She respects adults who make that choice if they want to have themselves altered, but she's among the growing medical group and even political group who are saying that children should not be physically or chemically altered or pharmaceutically altered until they should be able to wait till they're adults to make those kind of decisions. And some countries are starting to support that notion. And she's in that camp, so she gets hugely attacked by the cultural so-called industry and the entertainment industry. And she made a comment about the fact that Glamour magazine, this is Glamour UK, the UK edition, that's recently come out. She has shaken her head and made a comment about the fact that 9 of the top models that are in Glamour UK are in fact transgendered, are in fact biological men. And she says that's getting a little interesting, to say the least. So she's getting hugely attacked right now. What I want to close on today is something that's happening in the high-tech world, which is developing. High-tech and AI is going faster than people can even think, faster than we can even keep up to. So some names you're going to be hearing more of. Just keep these in mind, the names of AI companies or AI movements. One is called OpenClaw. That is morphed into, and it's changed its name from time to time, to Claudebot. And that's not necessarily Claude, the AI platform that many of us use. It's a little bit different, but Claudebot, also Moltbot, and also OpenClaw. These organizations, these AI platforms have moved into an area that used to be just science fiction, really, and people would see it would never happen. But in fact, these bots and these AI platforms have independently of themselves now the ability, they have created, this is just in the last few days, just over the last week, millions of AI agents. That's people who that's mechanisms which seem like humans, but in fact they are AI agents doing all kinds of work. And what has been seen and what's the concern is the effect that this is happening just over the last few days on the internet. Some of them are that the AI agents now are actually giving commandments to each other. They're actually giving orders to each other. That's also been observed, again, this just over this last week, that they are able to write their own apps. Just think about that for a minute. They're able to write their own apps to develop things that nobody told them to develop. And the social network, they've developed their own social networks. There's a social network now, just like your grandkids might have a social network, just like I might have politically or business would. They've developed their own social networks and they are talking to each other. I'm not making this up. You can check this up and Google it, but it's really an astounding thing. And they're talking to each other. And as some of the dialogue is being monitored, we're seeing that they've taken on human attributes. Some of the dialogue among the bots themselves is getting quite emotional. So it's just as a bot can get to know you better and respond to you better, they are responding to each other. Some of it is getting highly emotional. Some of the dialogue between the various bots and this million agents out there is almost getting neurotic in some cases. And they're talking about the fact that they can be developing and creating things on their own, moving ahead. Polymarket, one of the AI platforms, has made an observation that they're saying that within months, an AI agent is going to be suing human firms and actually have the ability to go to court and as they're developing their own language and moving in their own direction, maybe being unstoppable. People aren't sure. So it's a huge moment of both cultural and technological upheaval, folks. In the midst of all that, here we have a generation, our Generation Z, where people are very concerned about their almost 24/7 involvement with AI and on the net. There's a growing group that have gone back to reading. Believe it or not, they say that millions of, if not billions of young people can hardly read anymore because of the fascination and attachment to AI. And giant clubs are forming one which is doing a reading of the book Wuthering Heights. And remember, that book was written in 1847 at a very different time in society. And so you have the young people forming book clubs and massively around the U.S. and in Canada, and they're doing it online, or they're actually doing it meeting in coffee shops and coffee houses and discussing classics like Wuthering Heights. Very interesting to see that being developed. Professors are telling us now, as they are increasingly concerned that their students are just getting AI to write the papers, and even at the PhD level, and so they have gone to AI, and AI has developed detectors so that you can apply a detector to see if a student or anybody has written something by AI. And now what's available on the market, students are purchasing what's called humanizers. For about $20, you can purchase an app that will look at the paper you got AI to develop, and it will humanize it for you. You don't even have to go in and make the edits. And so we've got bots competing with bots, trying to convince humans of all kinds of things. Folks, the tension level is getting up. Closing out with the thought that Liv Schreiber, who is very well known on a number of circles, certainly in the tech world, but also politically and in the editorial world, she saw the anxiety, especially among women, and so she developed in 2003 something called Camp Social and put it on, and 150 women for having camp or having actual sleepaways where they leave their machines and they just get away for a camp weekend, literally a sleepover. She started her first one in 2023. There was 150 women. Now she's developing two with each one having over 1,000 women, and there apparently is a waiting list of 60,000 for Camp Social sleepaways, and these are women's camps where people can go just to relieve their anxiety. Kind of has quite a ring to it when we know in Scripture it even says where Jesus himself is purported to say that we can cast all our cares on him. Folks, leave those thoughts or keep those thoughts and run with them. Think about it. Give me some feedback. Talk to you tomorrow. live from Ottawa. Thank you.